once again, I'm your host, Doc Rodden, and this is Horror News Radio, the official Gruesome Magazine podcast. Back with me again this week are the scariest, goriest, bloodiest co-hosts on the net. And tonight we're reviewing the New Mutants. All right. I don't sound like there was an echo. All right. My mind is going crazy. All right. I don't know what time it is, what day, what year. The New Mutants were all right. This movie has a very interesting history. It'll be very interesting to get into our reaction to it. Finally, as it's available to most anybody, playing on HBOMax after a very long trip to our eyeballs. All right. Also joining me tonight is the one and only Dave Dreher. Dave, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good. I'm feeling mutiny. Mutant-ish. Mutant-like.
Mutante. I think it's the correct pronunciation.
That's it.
Yeah, we're talking about your favorite subject, superhero.
Oh,
movies.
yes. I'm thrilled. This one does at least have some horror vibe to it.
Very much so. There's good reason to include it here on Horror News Radio. All right. Also joining this week is award-winning filmmaker Christopher G. Moore. How you doing, sir?
I am joyful. I am Anya Taylor joyful. Just saying.
Yes, you are. Oh, that is so amazing. All right. Also joining us is Vanessa. She's the podcasting rock star and international cosplay queen. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Feeling strong like a bear.
Oh, strong like bear. Oh my gosh. You're mixing up your Marvel movies, but that's kind of awesome.
Bear.
Yes,
Maybe.
but we'll take it. All right. Let's welcome our special guest host tonight. It is the one and only Chad Hunt. How you doing, Chad?
Hey, Chad.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
Not as happy as Christopher. But I'm happy.
Nobody is as happy.
If you were Anya Taylor Joy.
No, thank you for having me on, and it's going to be a cool discussion, I think.
It is going to be a cool discussion. Now, of course, if you're watching the show on YouTube, you can see that there's plenty of comics on the back wall there behind him. Sir, you are a comic book artist. You actually inked for Marvel Comics.
Yes, I did.
Did you ever do any New Mutants or X-Force or any of those characters?
I did a lot of X-Force issues and Wolverine, the regular Uncanny X-Men title. Yeah, so you I knew my way around there a little bit.
Yeah. You and I are probably very familiar with these characters, right?
Yeah.
With the New Mutants, especially the Sienkiewicz era.
Yeah.
All right, which is a very, very influential and interesting stretch. About a year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
Yeah. He sort of broke his teeth on this. This is where you saw him get really good on this title. So.
Yeah, before that it was Moon Knight, right?
Moon Knight, yeah.
And then they went on this, and it took a while to break in. I remember the reaction when the first couple of issues came out was kind of like WTF, but then it became like the hottest thing. The Demon Bear, all this stuff is all very. I don't know. I loved it when it came out. Very, very, very. It actually got me back into the New Mutants. I'd kind of fallen away for it, and when this happened, I got back into it. All right, enough about that crap. Let's talk about the New Mutants. What is it? All right, it is. It's a movie. It came out in 2020. It's on HBO Max right now. Started streaming around April 16th. The synopsis is 5 young mutants just discovering their abilities while held in a secret facility against their will, fight to escape their past sins and save themselves. Directed by Josh Boone, written by Josh Boone and Nate Lee. The cast includes Maisie Williams, Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Hanspraga, Blue Hunt, and Henry Zaga. Tagline: there is something new to fear. All right. Before we so what we're going to do is we're going to give our first impressions. Then we're going to talk about the film a little bit. When we talk about the film a little bit, we're just going all spoilers. This movie. Just come on. Let's just do spoilers. And then we're going to wrap things up with our final thoughts, our score 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But I've got to give a little context to this. This movie was part of the Fox X-Men universe and was going to come out years ago. We saw a trailer for it sometime. It was like 2018, I think. Maybe
Around
sooner,
there.
maybe
Something like that. Yeah.
And it had gotten a lot of buzz, at least in our circles, because it was going to be horror based, and it was based on the story that I was talking about with the Demon Bear and Danny. But then weird things happened, and it got pushed back, and then it got pushed back again, and then it got weirder. Disney bought Fox, and then it went into limbo again, and then it finally was going to come out, and the world went into a pandemic, COVID, and it went away again. And it finally got released in a very weird scenario. Some people may have seen it in a theater back in the fall. Maybe not. Some people may have rented it, but now it's finally out on HBOMax. And I, just for one, want to say I hope it finds an audience, because this film has gotten a really bad. It's like cursed. It's almost like it's a cursed film. Just a really bad shake, and it's much better than what you probably think it's going to be. And but I might be biased because I actually love these characters. So with all that spiel in the mix here, let's find out what our first impressions were. And we're going to start off with our guest host here, Chad Hunt, because, sir, I really got to know, what was your first impression of
I rented it back when it first was available to rent, and being a big fan of I knew it was going to cover the Demon Bear saga, but I knew also they were introducing these characters for the first time, so I was kind of curious as how they would do that. And one thing I try to do is, when a comic book or a movie is based on a pretty popular comic book story arc or whatever, is try not to compare the two, because comics are one thing, movies are another thing.
Especially with Fox, right?
Yeah, especially with them. But even the Marvel movies too are not, even though they stick pretty close, there's changes that have to be made for whatever reason. And yeah, there was a lot of changes to the story here compared to the comic book. But I just really try to watch whatever it is on its own merit. And I really was surprised how much I liked this movie. There were things in it that had to do with Danny's parents and the Demon Bear that weren't really followed in with this story, but it still made sense. It still was a good, way to go with the story and everything. The relationship between Rain and Danny was not in the comics. It was purely a platonic friendship for the most part, and here, where they became romantically involved with each other, was kind of added a little bit more depth to those characters, which I enjoyed that too. And some of it was scary. Some of it was really scary. I was surprised because the original comic was not like a horror story. It was a superhero, supernatural thing, but it wasn't that much of a horror story. But this is pretty much the first superhero horror movie like this I've seen, with really scary stuff in it. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I watched it again for this, and enjoyed it again. And the only thing I wish was it had maybe a little bit longer runtime, maybe to cover some of the other characters and build them up a little bit. But overall, I really thought it was just a rocking good times superhero movie, and one of the best Fox movies. Anyway,
kind of ironic, right? That the one that
the last one's the best one. Folks.
Never could breathe life, right? There's a lot I have to ask you, but we'll wait for that because we need to get everybody else's opinion. So, Dave Dreher, you are up next. You are the Marvel fan of all of us. No, that's not true. But what was your first impression of the New Mutants?
I'll make it quick and then just sit quietly in the corner. Actually, I enjoyed this film just right. I didn't know anything of what was going on. I mean, all these X-Men type movies all seem kind of the same to me. It's these people with these abilities and they feel displaced, and everyone stares at them like they're freaks, and they find their power and then all's right with the world. I mean, that seems to be the general arc of all these.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I did like the Demon Bear after listening to you carry on about it for the last 14 years since they announced this. I remember when they first broke the news that this was coming, and Doc's like, "Oh, the Demon Bear, the Demon Bear!" So, and it didn't disappoint. The Demon Bear was pretty damn cool, kind of badass. When we get into spoilers, I kind of expected the final. Again, I don't want to give away too much at this point because I know we haven't said anything. But when the Demon Bear finally meets the person it's been tracking,
yes, you can say
I kind of expected a little bit more than just a soothing touch to the nose and all's right with the world. It almost seemed kind of anticlimactic to me, but again, I'm speaking kind of out of turn. I don't know if it was anticlimactic because I don't know what the hell I was watching. But overall, of all of them, it was probably my favorite of all the ones you forced me to watch.
Forced you to watch? Wow. Nice.
So, yeah, it wasn't bad. It was good. It was a fun ride.
All right. We got Venom up next. I'm just letting you know. So. At least sometime in this summer. And Morbius, yeah, I'm not done with you yet, sir.
I know.
All right, Vanessa. So fill me in. I know that you do a lot of cosplay and you're familiar with a lot of Marvel characters, comic book characters, but I don't know how in depth you are with the X-Men. Are you familiar with the New Mutants?
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Fair enough. What was your first impression of this movie?
I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't particularly impressed one way or the other. I liked the direction that they went in for a Marvel movie. That's not something that you generally see. A spooky mental asylum basically with all these kids trapped inside. Like that's pretty dark. And then some of the stuff that you see in it is also pretty dark. But I just think like it could have been better. I think they could have explained more to us about the characters. I think we could have cared more about the characters. I didn't make a connection to any of them. I didn't particularly care about any of them. I think you're right. It could have had a longer runtime in order to facilitate that and kind of, because comic book people are going to know about these characters, but I, as someone who learns most of their comic book information through movies, didn't know anything about them and would like to have known more or know more about where this is going or had some better explanation of things. A lot of things there was a lot of suspension of belief here because clearly one person is not going to be running an entire mental asylum, right, for these kids. So there was a lot of things in it that were just like, all right, well, I'm going to believe this because the movie is telling me to believe this kind of thing until I get to whatever the bigger thing it is trying to tell me. So I don't know. In my opinion, I kind of understand all the meh that there's been about it from the talk and all the stuff going on and the pushbacks and everything. And then the not getting as much support, I guess, when it did finally drop. To me, I kind of get it because it's just kind of like, okay, cool. There was cool stuff in it, but I didn't get enough to actually care about it.
That's fair. That's fair. That's
here. That
might be a big flaw in the film. All right, Christopher G. Moore, what was your first impression of New Mutants?
You mean X-Men Dream Warriors?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
And you have one girl who basically has Freddy Krueger powers. Well, I love Dream Warriors, so well, you know what? I was coming into this thinking it was not. I mean, because when you've heard so much stuff and when a film keeps getting pushed back, you automatically assume something's wrong with it. And then they were supposed to do reshoots, and then when it finally got released, they were like, "Oh well, we didn't have to do the reshoots. This is what we meant." And then I watched it and I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was better than a lot of the crappier, other superhero films I've watched, whether it be the Sony ones or X-Men ones or some of the crappier ones. And I can understand people's issues with it, but actually, I mean, I mean, I think for me, it was just nice to see a superhero film that dealt with like horror type stuff. Because there's, I mean, there's stuff in this is like, wow, they could really use this in Nightmare on Elm Street films, because it almost has that Stephen King's It thing too, to where like Pennywise, bringing your fears to life. And I like that. And there's also some very beautiful moments. I love the moment where the two people are just sitting there and they're looking at the little dome and the rain is creating these little ripples in the dome and stuff. There's just beautiful moments as well. And I mean, visually, there's some really cool things, and you have those creepy smiley face guys. And, but yeah, I think it does feel kind of sparse on the fleshing out the characters more, which they try to, within the script, they try to reveal things here and there by revealing their fears. But, and then you have other things which are just very obvious from the get-go, because he's like, oh, we see the girl watching Willow and Buffy making out. Oh, she's Irish and she's religious, and oh, she's probably a lesbian and she's having problems with that issue. So some of it just keeps, they kind of hammer it home in certain parts of it. So, but I mean, overall, I actually enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the horror aspect of it. And again, they sort of, it is kind of sparse, but overall, I thought a lot of the special effects was really cool. And anytime I can see Anya Taylor-Joy on the screen, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this. I really don't think it deserves all the crap it gets. I mean, it's definitely not the best, Marvel superhero film out there, but it's in that kind of like that middle ground, that okay ground that I wouldn't mind watching again or enjoying certain parts of it. It's not like some of these other properties, like, oh, just don't make me watch that ever again. Because it's got a good cast, and I thought the guy from Stranger Things, I think he did a really pretty good, like, Southern accent that worked really well. Yeah, so it is funny. Everybody had like different accents. Each character had different accents.
Well, that was a big part of it. It's like it was all from different parts of the world.
Yeah, and it adds to the diversity of the different things. And I did like that you had. You have things like in the other Marvel universe that are so scared to even touch like same-sex relationships. In this one, it's like, oh, we're going to have two girls kissing in a cemetery. So I mean, it's like some things is like, wow, this is a whole lot bigger than some of the Marvel stuff is willing to do sometimes. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I was actually pleasantly surprised by it, because I was really, I mean, I don't think I was to the point of Vanessa where I didn't care about the characters. I cared about the characters, but I think I could definitely see the thinness of the script when it came to fleshing out the scenarios and certain things were, and the woman over the place was kind of sparsely. I really would love to see more with her character. It really didn't make any sense with her character and her motivations, but yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, it felt like the whole asylum area was kind of felt the sting of a lower budget where they couldn't flesh out the cast and bring in orderlies and whatnots and other people. They're all it's very intimate.
For someone that has like these bubble dome powers, she has this overarching bubble dome powers, but you think that would go away if somebody just made her pass out.
You would, right? You would. Okay, so I admit I'm a really big fan of these characters and the story which this is primarily based on. The essence of the characters they caught and they captured fairly well. Rain, Danny, Alana, they did really well. Sam isn't the Sam that I imagined. That's the Charlie Heaton character. It works for the movie, but it needed to be somebody far more white bread, with the spiky hair and the big ears. But what can you do? You can't get everything. Roberto, for me, that character, even though he has probably one of the better scenes with the swimming pool, he doesn't really get much else, right? And Sam too. I think that's the unfortunate thing is that you have these 5 larger than life characters, and they're never given the opportunity to become the larger than life, except for arguably Magic, right? Alana, who at the end, wields a sword and shows off, and then Lockheed's there, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So happy that the puppet became real. It was cool with the puppet. I admit, I was like, okay, that's an interesting way to at least bring Lockheed in, and then it was actually flying around. It was great. So there's a lot I like about this movie. Now, I don't like everything. I don't think it's. I do think it's one of the best Fox ones. I do think it actually is better than a lot of the X-Men movies. Not all of them, but a lot of them. It certainly isn't so overblown that they basically just go and then screw it all up. There's decisions here, and those decisions are good or bad, weighed on the decisions that they made, and that's a kind of a respectable thing. I think the cast is really good. The 5 main characters, I really like their chemistry together. I like how they were, some were combative, some were very supportive, and then of course we got the scary bits, right? And there are a number of scary scenes in here because nightmares are coming true, including the smiley face demons that are haunting Alana, and then of course the demon bear, and there are more than that. And it's I thought all those little sequences really worked. Now, what unfortunately I think didn't happen was I don't think those sequences necessarily developed or illuminated our characters. I don't know if we know who many of the characters are, other than their names and what they are in this place. And I know them from the comics, so I can fill in the blanks. But when you get somebody that's meeting them for the first time, like Vanessa, there isn't information there.
Right.
You get the thin layer that, okay, Sam had this accident with his dad, and it was, this happened. But there's so much more there to this character than that, right? There's so much more conflict that really need to be a part of this. So I would have loved to seen those fleshed out. I don't know how they could have done that in the context of this movie, because I think it's a little bit against the tone, right? So it would be an incredible challenge to squeeze that into a tone, and I don't think the budget and the direction was up to it. Not the direction, but the direction of Fox at the time, and what they sold the movie on. So it's flawed, but it's fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I like the Wolverine movies and Deadpool movies better, but I really enjoyed when this works. It really works, and there's so much potential in this that the second movie, I think, had things been played out differently in another universe, it could have been the second movie could have really just soared if it had taken off. So it's kind of unfortunate, but at the same time, it is what it is. It's this weird thing that happened to this particular movie. The other movies there have been other movies that have similar fates, right? That have this troubled release and then kind of vanish into obscurity. I just think it's unfortunate that this film fell into that. I think it could have found an audience.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some things work out a little bit better. Like Cabin in the Woods actually had a similar problematic release, but ended up turning out pretty well. But yeah, I think this has those. It has those issues. I mean, it's still, you can still see what they're trying to go for, and you can see the potential in it. But there's certain areas that don't work so well. I mean, it's like, I hate to bring it back up again, but I mean, go watch Dream Warriors and see how they develop all the different characters and how you have a better grasp of those characters. And in this one, it's like it's one of those screenwriting things to where, like, we'll just spell it out through their fears and these certain scenarios, and it's not enough. I mean, this is one of the few times I'll say there needs to be a little bit more exposition with characters to sort of understand who they are, because they end up just being, instead of being characters, they become more characters. And then you can only depend so much on like, okay, we need to have this fear scenario show up so we can point out that this person had sexual trauma and this person had, was abused by their priest and all these different things. When some of that stuff should come out a little bit more so within the dialogue between characters, and I don't know about you. If I'm being rebellious in an institution, I'm going to go play my tambourine with my friends. That's usually what I do. No. So yeah. I think some of the biggest flaws in this fall within the script and how they bring these characters to life.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get into the characters, and I definitely want to get in with Chad because I need to find out what he thought of them. But before we do, we got to bring Dave back into the equation here for at least a short bit. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned that it actually was scary, and I agree with you that there were parts in here that actually got pretty tense and pretty creepy and scary. But I want you to speak on that. We have, the coal mine thing. You got the preacher that's coming after Rain. You've got the bear. You've got the faces,
the smiley face guys. Yep.
Did they all work, or did certain ones work more for you?
No, I think they all worked for the most part. Again, although at some points I didn't really understand why they were there. I mean, we knew they were part of this nightmare or this dream, but I'm not sure I 100% understood why they were there at times. But I think they worked, and by far the demon bear is the piece de resistance of this of this film. It looks good. It's terrifying. That whole last scene in the church is good. It was good. It was a good finale. I liked it. But yeah, I think overall, those scenes kept me going through the film. They propelled me forward to the next scene. Like that. So,
well, they were spaced out pretty well, right? It felt that way.
Yeah.
The film was designed and edited in a way. I think Christopher might agree with that as far as pacing goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me the film primarily just looked like, okay, let's put all these different fear-based action scenes. It was more focused on that than it was focused on anything else.
Oh, certainly was, yeah. Well, there was another focus, and that was the relationship between Rain and Danny. And Vanessa, I'd like you to speak to that because you said you didn't really care for any of the characters. So I guess the relationship between these two characters didn't speak to you.
I
even
did.
Alana.
I did like that. I mean, I liked the female characters and the way they were written, but they were also kind of flat. So everything felt a little predictable and just kind of rolling with it. I did like that they developed that relationship between them. And honestly, Rain was kind of one of my favorite characters. I really liked her backstory a lot. I really liked her transformation scenes, the way she used her mutant power, the way when we saw her wolf dog persona appear. Like, I really liked those moments, and she was so soft and sweet. While, having gone through something so terrible. So it's not so much that like it was bad what they did. It's just, for me particularly, I don't know, maybe it just felt a little young adultish, So to people of a certain age, that's new and fresh and interesting. But after you've seen stuff like that done a few times, it just is like, okay, there could be a little bit more meat on this bone to me. But I did like y'all were saying, that's not something you would see in other properties, especially a lesbian relationship with characters that young. And I did like that a lot.
Right. Yeah. So Alana is in the comics very very much the outsider within the outsiders, and she's portrayed very, strongly that way in this movie. Did that work for you, Vanessa? Her character?
She was cute. The tough chick, the one who doesn't want to let anybody in. And I've been playing a lot of Skyrim lately, so whenever she's like conjure bound sword, and she makes her sword arm, I was really enjoying that a lot. And I like the representation of her safe place, and I kind of wish they would have, like, that's something that you can take that is an actual horror in life, what she experienced. So I think they could have, gone a little bit deeper with that even, and brought out the horror in that experience a little more, therefore letting us explore this other world of hers, instead of just getting flashes and bits and pieces of this other world that she'd created, that she made real out of just believing it and going there. That's another thing, it talks about, we see her have this, like, all these different abilities, but we don't actually see how great they are, or get a better explanation of where all these different abilities came from. Hers in particular, you kind of see the other ones. They're all very specific, except for our lead. She has something that's a bit bigger and out of control, but she had, like, magic just has so much that we saw her do in different ways, just being able to completely disappear, and that's another thing that I wish that we could have gotten a little bit more development on. Pros and cons to having an ensemble cast and not wanting to give one more time than the other, right? Because I felt like everybody got the same amount of time in this, but at the same time, it's like, well, maybe one should have gotten a little bit more than the other.
Yeah. Well, in this case, Danny, since it was her story,
right.
But it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of not to. All right, so we got to talk to characters. I've been waiting patiently for this. Chad, you and I both, grew up reading the New Mutants and Lana character and Magic, who in my eyes is the most fascinating of the bunch. How well was she translated into this movie for you?
I felt like in the comics around this story, she was a lot younger than how she's portrayed here. She was more childlike, maybe, but I thought I liked it. I liked it a lot because even though there wasn't much there to develop it, you got the feeling that this is somebody who's been hurt. All these kids have been hurt in some way or another, but she puts up this wall, like Vanessa brought out, that she's not going to let anybody in. She's really tough and this kind of thing, but she's got the little Lockheed puppet, and she's really scared on the inside. And I thought she really did a good job of portraying that. That's not so much. I went back and read the story arc today too.
Oh, did you? Nice.
Yeah, and a lot of the dialogue doesn't hold up.
No.
I'll say that.
No.
Well, there's probably a reason they don't have thought balloons anymore. Just over-explain everything. But yeah, I really enjoyed her performance there, and I thought it was portrayed in a way that would be relatable. And yes, she said some harsh things, and I've heard some things about, she said some racially insensitive things, and she did. But it was also cool to see her start to let people in, and it changed her whole attitude and how she, and brought that down. So I thought it was a great interpretation of it. Of course, in the comics, she's the one that got to kill the demon bear with that big sword, splitting his skull with the sword. But with it being Danny's movie, they kind of had to hand that job over to her. But I think she could have done it.
I think she could have done it.
She could have done it. Yeah.
I kind of wish she had. I think that would have made the ending a little bit more palatable, because it kind of ended in literally on a whimper.
They went with the Hulk. Hey, big guy.
Yeah.
Sun's getting real low.
Yeah, it made for, and I will say, I hate to say this, but I think, you know, I think the actress who played Moonstar, I didn't like her as much. She wasn't as believable, I think, as well as the other actors in it. And when she's the main linchpin behind while this stuff happens, it kind of like doesn't make the overall thing as strong, you know, especially when she's having to compete with, like, I know I have a crush on her, but Anya Taylor-Joy, I think, is an amazing actress, and she really is able to portray all those different facets of different things. And there's just parts where I think the actress who played Danny, she felt a little bit green, I think, in her approach to things, and I think that sort of I think that's why you probably didn't like. Even though she dealt with a lot of traumatic things in the film, with her having to overcome that stuff, you really couldn't feel for her as much, I guess. So I think that, for me, that was probably one of a little bit of the weaknesses of it that didn't really help sell the overall product. And yeah, the ending, I think, you know, it would have been much more badass if Anya's character was you know, got to kick the final ass of that demon bear, because yeah, if it ends up being the bear whisperer ending, it doesn't really work as well.
And I think the way it played out in the comics too, it made sense for Illyana to be the one to kill it, because her magical sword, the bear's supernatural in nature, and there was a reason. Can I spoil the comic?
Yeah.
But the demon bear was made up of her mother and father, who were initially killed, and that was her whole reason for having this anxiety and always seeing this bear, is her parents were trying to hunt her down, and because they were trapped in this spirit world, and it manifested itself as this demon bear. But you know, with her, because I think they were trying to go for something a little more dramatic at the beginning when they showed her father get killed, and didn't even bring the mother into it at all. But I can see why they would make that choice, and not. I mean, he showed up at the end, but it didn't have anything to do with the demon bear. But I don't know. I feel like it was this was more Danny's movie than the others. And I also got the feeling that this movie, they really expected this to go somewhere and take off. And maybe they could flesh these characters out in later films, but you know, that's the feeling I got as everything was playing out, because, you know, none of the characters are really fleshed out that well, except Danny and maybe Rain. And the others were kind of waiting their turn, I guess, and it never came.
Yeah. They each, like Dave was saying, they each got their moment, or
a
couple moments. They got one moment to show off their power and another moment to show off their fear, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And to speak to that, we got to talk about Cannonball, because Cannonball was going to be a difficult character to realize, and
DJ Qualls.
Yeah. Oh well, that would have worked.
Yeah.
I'm going to share, Chad, and I'm going to ask you to back me up, that I enjoyed, like, his first showing of his power when he's tied to the rock and he's trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
And just like beating the shit out of himself, hitting everything. And then and all the characters have this problem, and they all kind of, find their way. They find their footing, which is, what the film is going to do. Right.
Yeah.
Did that work for you? Did the Cannonball character? No. It's the weakest one, right?
Well, I thought it was cool the way they manifested his blasting power and stuff like that. But I was wanting to see just at least one or two segments where when he blasts off and he's flying, you can't see from the waist down. He's just all energy and he's blasting and flying. I wanted to see something of him flying, with all this energy blowing behind him. And we didn't really get to see that. That all happened really fast. Like when he shot down the hallway and destroyed all the Smiley Men, and he was just vibrating and shake and take off. I wanted to see more of his face when he was doing that, and that kind of, I guess. I thought it, but effects wise, I thought it was cool how they handled it, but I wanted to see a little bit more from it.
All right. Well, as we wrap this up, let's throw one last question to Dave because we got to bring him back in because we don't want to fall asleep.
Poor Dave. He just sits here and listens to everybody talk.
How many more New Mutant movies do you want to see?
Oh, God. At least one a week, please.
All right, there you go. All right, well, let's wrap this up with our final thoughts, our score of 1 to 5, and our favorite scene. But before we do, if you're still listening, we want to thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we hope you're enjoying our reviews, not only with the New Mutants, but the other ones that we have on the site as well. Thank you for hanging out. If you want to help us out, hitting the subscribe button or sharing with a friend is a great way to help us, and it's really simple, really and free, and it really, really helps. You can hit the button, dislike button, hit the bell if you want to be notified. We'd love to hear your comments, especially if you're a New Mutants fan. What do you think? Did they capture these characters? If you're not a New Mutants fan, did they even create characters you give a poop about? All right, yeah, let's find out. Let's find out. Quickly, let's thank our patrons over at Patreon, because without their patronage, we wouldn't be able to do not only Horror News Radio, but Gruesome Magazine, Decades of Horror, and Heroes and Droids. Thank you so much for helping make these dreams come true, man. All right, let's do this. Our final thoughts, our score, our favorite scene. Chad Hunt, you are first, sir.
It has to be, and I'm probably stealing this from everybody. But the when the demon bear first appeared, I was a little taken back how good that looked. I mean, it really looked good, and then I was like, oh, this is going to be good, and it wasn't all that great. But but I just thought that was an amazing job on the CGI and everything on the demon bear, and how they all came together to fight it, and they sort of were exploring their powers a little more. Yeah, that was it for me. That was a great scene. Oh, and I'll give it. Do we do the ratings now?
Yeah, 1 to 5. 1 to 5. So.
I'm new to this podcast. I give it like maybe a 3.5.
All right, well, that's strong.
5.
That's strong.
Yeah, I mean, because I enjoyed watching it both times I watched it, so it wasn't a chore.
Wasn't a chore.
Wasn't a chore.
That's not going to go in the box, but that's awesome. All right, Dave Dreher, sir. Marvel
I don't think I'm going to give you anything. I'm not going to give you anything too much too box worthy either. But it was okay. I enjoyed it enough. I'm going to make it short and sweet. I'm going to give it a 2.5. And actually, I think my favorite scene might be Chad's, just a different piece of it. I actually liked, it was during the climactic battle. I'm not going to know the character names, but it's when the one girl takes the other girl and they go and hide in the confession thing, and the bear kind of bites its way down through. That was actually pretty terrifying. You can see the fire coming out of the bear's eyes, and it looked good, and it was actually kind of spooky because her whole thing seems to be, well, demons can't come into a church. Guess again. Yeah. So I'm going to go with that for a favorite scene. But if you have HBOMax, you're paying the $14.95. Watch it. It ain't costing you anything.
There you go. All right, Vanessa, what is your final thoughts? Your score and favorite scene?
I think this is a harmless movie. It's not going to offend you to watch it, but it might not be your favorite in the series, But like you said, it might be your favorite Fox or Sony interpretation of a Marvel movie. It was cool for the horror aspects that it put into it. The demon bear was awesome. I think that's probably everybody's number one favorite scene when we saw that demon bear appear finally. And there was some really, those smiley face guys were creepy. They were really creepy.
They were.
And I really wish they would have developed the moments in the coal mine more too, because that in itself is inherently a scary place to be. I'd watch it again. I would not watch it again. It's just, I wish I could have gotten more out of it. And you never know what they're going to do now with the property because of all the issues that it's had. So with that, I'm going to give it a 3. Kind of middle-ish, a little higher than middle. And my favorite scene. So I definitely, Demon Bear is awesome. And I really think Rain was one of my favorite characters in the movie. So My favorite scene is the one where she's in the shower and that priest comes in the shower, or the cardinal or whatever he is comes in the shower, and you see he's all ripped up from what she's done to him, and he's gonna brand her again with this W for being a witch, and it's like very, very terrifying, you know, all the steam coming out and everything. And I like that her place to go to too when she's experiencing that is to become her wolf self again. You hear the wolf crying to be let out. I felt like that was really, really difficult, you know, to watch, especially when you bring in how she tried to go to him to help her solve this problem, and he's like, oh hell no, bitch, we killing you now. You get no help from me. So yeah, I really liked her story arc a lot, and that's just but y'all know me, anytime you mix in religious horror into something, it's always going to be like a little extra tick mark from me.
There you go. There you go. All right, Christopher G. Moore, your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene.
So yeah, I think this is one of those films that kind of has a reputation when it doesn't need to have a reputation. I think it's one of those sort of middle ground films that it's not horrible. It's got some really great special effects. It's got some pretty cool sort of horror type scenes you don't normally see in superhero films, and I kind of wish that we'd see more of that, even though now Disney owns the X-Men. So, but I think there's
might get with Blade, right? So,
well,
or Doctor Strange. Right?
Well, there's rumor Blade might be PG-13, but but yeah, I think I still enjoyed it. I think it kind of I think the ending of it's probably one of the things I like the least. I think they could have attempted a little bit more, but but I think overall, I think it's a very good attempt, and it's definitely got some really creepy moments. It has its Dream Warrior Stephen King moments. Even the demon bear, when that big head comes through, reminded me of the big Pennywise head that comes through the screen. Because I was like, oh god, that bear's got a big ass head. I don't want that chomping through my house anytime soon.
Does a Deep Blue Sea moment, right? So.
Yeah, and there's moments where the bear just like, and you see all like the spit flying out. And I was like, wow, actually. They spend a good amount of money on the special effects. It's no wonder they don't have any orderlies in that institution, because they spent all the money at ILM or wherever they got their visual effects. But overall, I enjoyed it. Of course, you got Anya Taylor-Joy, who's basically playing Taryn and Will from Dream Warriors combined, being magic and badass at the same time. So anytime your superpower could be a D&D character, it's pretty kick-ass. So yeah, I'll give it a 3.25. I think it's, the dialogue needed a little bit more superpowers to it to make it to flesh out the characters a little bit more. And I think the ending kind of didn't work. And I think, I think the main actress, I think you can tell seems to be a little bit new or whatever. It didn't work as well, but I think overall I still enjoyed it. And they had some really great moments. And if I were to pick a scene, I'd say the moment when Ileana goes out there with her little a dragon on her shoulder, and her like freaking magic arm and magic sword, aka old timey lightsaber, and jumping all around fighting that monster, which I just wanted more of that.
I did too.
So yeah, that's probably my favorite moment. Although any moment with Anya Taylor-Joy is a joy.
There you go. Did you give us a score?
Yeah, I gave it 3.25, sir.
Nice, nicely done. All right, yeah, I'm going to 3.5. So we'll just throw that out there. It's also interesting to know that Ilana Rasputin is Colossus' sister, younger sister. And to speak to what Chad was talking about, she was a much younger sister and disappeared because she disappeared into the limbo and was raised by Belasco.
I think so, right? Yes. I think that's right.
And then reappeared as, the teenager with the sword and everything. So we don't get all that here, and it has nothing to do with this movie, but it's an interesting thing. I just wanted to speak to her. their relationship was, always touched on in the comics. I don't know where I'm going with that, so I'll shut up about that. But so I dug this movie quite a bit. It actually worked a lot better than I feared it was going to. I feared it was going to suck, and I thought, I wasn't sure they were going to capture those horror moments. Josh Boone was always about, early on, and then later they kind of said, no, it's not going to be a horror film. It's just going to, and then no, he made a horror. This is a horror film. The last 30 minutes of this is straight up horror, and there's lots of little horror bits in the front of it as well. To me, it's a horror film, and it works. It works, and it's technically got a witch and a werewolf and nightmares and demons and ghosties and all kinds of craziness. So all mixed in with superheroes and mutants. Is it perfect? By no means. It has the flaws of the villain is really underwhelming. Didn't really, since it was the only one, needed to go a little bit more over the top to make her stand out. Right? She was just a little bland. Not that the actress was bland; it's just the character just really didn't punch.
She was never really a villain in the comics. She always helped the X-Men.
Right. Well, she certainly could have been a big villain here in the movie, and it's fine.
I mean, I thought you were talking about the nurse or the doctor that was taking care of him.
Yeah, Dr. Reyes. That's what I'm talking about.
Dr. Reyes. Okay.
Yeah. I just thought her as a villain was a little bland, right? But at the end, I enjoyed it. I thought the Demon Bear was great to see, and I don't know. I would. It's a shame we'll never get to see any more of these characters. It'll be
the big villain of the film was Mr. Sinister, but
that's what I was about to ask too, like because of the Essex Corporation.
Yeah, the Essex Corporation.
I read about that. Like that's a huge missed opportunity for nothing else to maybe plant a little seed to continue this, or to find a way to bring them in.
Yeah.
Well, they had a little bit of that. They had a little bit of that in Deadpool too.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It wasn't the first time.
And Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, some of the cleanup crew had Essex.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that film.
Yeah.
I haven't since I saw it. If that says anything.
A lot of missed opportunities throughout that franchise. So, did I give my favorite scene?
No, not yet.
Okay, my favorite scene is, you guys took the Demon Bears, obviously my favorite scene. But
of course.
I also thought Rain was really well realized. Her character is not necessarily the most, it's not the largest character in the New Mutants or in Marvel Universe. She's really, she's there, but she's never been the spotlight of anything. Never got her own little miniseries or anything. But I thought she was really well realized in this. It caught the fears that she had, that the religious fears, and being basically cast aside by her own religion, her own faith, right? And there's a lot of tragedy there. Now they didn't really capitalize on that to its fullest, and I think they should have. But at the same time, I thought they did. And her ferocity when she changed into Wolfsbane, 2 times, right? One time she went after the bear, and that was cool. But really, I thought when she went after Dr. Reyes and just cut her all the ribbons. And it was so vicious and feral. That was awesome. I like that. So, and she took a lot out of her, didn't she?
Well, she did the same thing to that bear too. She's like,
fearless to an extent.
Yep.
And the priest too, from the looks of him.
Yeah.
Deserved it.
All right. Well, there's 55 minutes that nobody knew was going to be dedicated to the Mutants. The little Marvel movie that never really happened. So thank you for hanging out and letting us talk about this movie. Chad, thank you for joining me. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you guys. It's a long time no see for you guys.
Yes, it's been a while. And
in person anyway. Yeah.
That too. Vanessa, Christopher, Dave, as always, thank you for joining me. It's great to have you here every week. Yeah. Nothing.
He told you he was going to do exactly what he just did, Doc. So you can't blame him.
No, fuck yeah!
Dave Dreher, I'm out.
Make me watch this shit.
All right. Well, hey, next week we're doing what? Mortal Kombat, so things are really going to get weird. So
another HBO Max.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's more HBO Max in our future.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.